Welcome to the Behind the Cause podcast presented by Make Good Grow. Each episode will hear from an inspiring leader from the third sector and unpick the highs and lows of running a good cause. Sit back, relax and enjoy. Welcome, thank you very much for joining us today. This is the Make Good Grow podcast, Behind the Cause, and today I am joined by Lynne and Andrew from New Futures Nepal. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is hand over to both of you to tell us a bit about New Futures Nepal, how you came to be, bit of your history, and then we're going to look into the future and kind of think about what's coming up and all the exciting ideas and plans and projects that you've got for the future as well. So over to you guys, take it away.
So Lynne, do you want to take this one as the you were involved in this slightly ahead of me? So do you want to take the intro in terms of where we came from and help us out?
Hi, my name's Lynne McCutcheon. I'm the chairman of New Futures Nepal, a charity that was formed slightly over 20 years ago now. It was formed when two groups of trekkers who had trekked in Nepal got together, and because we all felt we wanted to give something back to the people of that country, and so via a mutual trekking guide, we got together and started to raise funds to start with in a very small way, but we were very lucky. The charity grew. And today we've raised over £2 million. So, wow. It's quite an achievement. We're a small charity run entirely by volunteers, and most of the founding trustees are still trustees today, which is again something that creates a very good working environment between us. We respect each other and enjoy, like each other, I think, working together and inspire each other, I think, keep that passion going.
Yeah.
We're not all trekkers these days, but it was how it started and often is, I think, in Nepal. So that's a bit about me. Over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, hi. So my name's Andrew Small, and with Lynne, I was one of the founding trustees. So I think for different reasons, I wasn't in the same trekking group as Lynne. So I went out in 2002. So the reason I went was because I needed to do something for myself, something different. So I was post-divorce and really just needed to wake myself up and just do something different. So I signed up for this trek to go with 30 other people that I'd never met before, and we all rendezvoused in Kathmandu, and it was exciting. So I was there for I think 10 days trekking. I'd never trekked before. As Lynne said, I think what struck all of us that became involved with this was just how unique a country Nepal is, how desperately poor it is, how under-resourced it is, but how beautiful the country is and how beautiful the people are as well. So, they have a very, I think lots of people would know Nepal because of the Gurkhas, and, so they are a fighting nation, but equally they're such a gentle, spirited people. And we noticed as we were trekking around just how different it was to the UK, and how different it was to some of the things that we're used to, right? Everything, shopping, education, healthcare, standard of living, clothing, the whole lot. And we got the opportunity to see, some of the poorer, more desperate side of the country, and sometimes, the desperate straits that some of the children find themselves in. And Lynne's right, we came back. And within both groups, we started to fundraise, and we both were seeded with the idea that we wanted to do something. Even though it was just a drop in the ocean, we kind of felt compelled to try and do something here in the UK to be able to help a small number of people in Nepal. And I think it wasn't long before the two groups were introduced to each other. And it was coming together that's really helped us take off. So 20 years and £2 million later.
So what's happened with that £2 million? You've raised £2 million, but what's the output been in Nepal?
No, that's a great question. I think I think the first project that we did was to support a children's home in Kathmandu called the Hope Centre. It's a registered NGO under the Disabled Welfare Association. And the issue that they faced was that because they were in rented accommodation, and landlords would often prefer to have, I'm not going to say normal tenants, but would prefer to have, so I'm going to say normal tenants, not a children's home with some disability within there maybe or not. So one of the issues that they faced was that they would get settled, they would get the children into schools, and then the landlord would see a better offer somewhere else and move them out without very much notice or anything. So one of the things that touched us was that we wanted to help the DWA, that we thought was a fantastic organisation, selfless. The people that were working there also had other jobs and were working again on a part-time basis to look after these children. So one of the things that we tried to do initially was to raise enough money. So bearing in mind that we started in 2002 and we finished our first major project in 2005, our first major project was to provide enough funds for the DWA to buy a plot of land in Kathmandu. That was step one.
Right.
And then after that, to actually design and build a children's home that could accommodate a mixture of children, different genders, different physical abilities. And that's what we did. So I think we did all of that in our first 2 or 3 years, which I can tell you nobody was more surprised and pleased than we were. But we
were so lucky with the legacy. Within 18 months of forming the charity, we received a legacy of £25,000.
Yeah.
From a supporter of a neighbour of one of our trustees, and that was the biggest kickstart ever. It was extraordinary, and it went on like that. We have a great deal of luck and an awful lot of really great supporters. But that, the children's home was finished and built and occupied within under 5 years, wasn't it? And of our setting up the charity. So that was, and still there, still in the same spot, and expanded a bit. And we've, put solar panels and stuff in like that. It was the start, and we went on from there, as Andrew said, to find other projects. We were approached by other NGOs out there who needed help, and we have over the last 20 years, over the last 15 years really, tended towards providing financial aid more for the disabled sector. So children with cerebral palsy, we support an NGO called CP Nepal now, who provide daycare centres, help mothers' groups provide their own daycare centres to look after families whose children have cerebral palsy. And that's another great institution, and we're proud to be able to work and help them. We opened our second children's home, built again, bought land and built in 2007, and that was as a result of the Maoist war that was going on, the civil war was going on in Nepal. Another donor wanted to give us quite a lot of money, and we needed a project. And it wasn't safe at that time to be transferring lots of money into Kathmandu or into Nepal itself. And there was a great fear that particularly the young boys who were in the home at the Hope Centre may be in some sort of danger from the Maoists themselves. So we built a home in Kalimpong, which is just over the border in West Bengal.
Right.
And I think over 90% of the inhabitants of Kalimpong are Nepali by birth and certainly by language. And again, that was a project that went very well. We've housed, I think we've had 13 children go through it's called Hornbeam House. There's 13 children that have been raised, educated and cared for there, and I think we now have about 5 or 6 left who are going through education and further education. The others have left, are independent, are working. It's a good news story all round.
It's amazing, yeah, and no small feat either. They're big meaty projects that you've taken on, aren't they, over the years?
Rather, yes. If you look at it now, you just think, oh, how did we ever dare do it? Really?
Yeah, and also they're not things that are just drop in the ocean and you can move on, are they? There must be a big commitment in terms of your ongoing support to those homes and centres,
yes.
Definitely.
Yes, the lifeblood of our charity are the regular donors, the people who pay regularly, pay monthly, annually, whatever. But we have 2 schemes. We have a Sponsor a Child scheme, which it does what it says. Basically, you can choose to sponsor a child in one of the homes and pay us regularly, and you get annual reports on the child's welfare and so on, or you can just pay us regularly, and we will use the money as we think fit. It is a challenge, and it becomes a more increasing challenge as we become older as a charity, because finding new ways of fundraising, finding ways to interest people, increasing our outreach within the UK, within the world. And we have donors in Australia, and we have donors in France. We have, we do have an outreach, but it's a drip feeding process, really. It would be marvellous to suddenly have 10 new donors come in from somewhere all in one go. It doesn't happen, or it hasn't happened yet, but maybe this podcast will.
Well, you never know. I guess that must be one of the biggest challenges for you as an organisation, because, like you say, you're really a fundraising organisation, and you're passing those funds directly on. And what's really nice is, because you're 100% volunteer led and operated, people who donate to you can feel safe in the knowledge that all of their donations, 100% of what they're donating, is going towards the frontline services that are being delivered in Nepal, isn't it? And it's not, covering hefty office costs here in the UK or anything like that.
Just to ensure people understand, we work with registered NGOs in Nepal and India. The NGOs are audited them and checked. We have checks that we make ourselves all the time. And we work with other NGOs in Nepal in particular, who are there, who have offices in Kathmandu and have bases out there, and can go and check our projects if like the last 2 years, we can't get out there. But we, thank God for technology, we can easily see what's going on. We're in touch with the young adults who are in both homes regularly, on Facebook, and we use Zoom to talk to them and so on. So if anybody is interested in the charity, they can be confident. We, over 20 years in particular, we do know what we're doing. We've set up a whole structure that is safe. We get money out there quickly and easily. We don't lose it, and we know where, I won't say every penny goes, but we do know that everything we send out there is spent as intended. And that's a big thing, I think. That's a big thing. People need to feel that their money is going where they want it to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not going on paying for office blocks and Mercedes for us. We work from kitchen tables and we work, from back rooms and garden rooms and wherever you like. But it's your money does go. The money does go where it's intended. We just like more of it, please.
Yeah. So that's a big call out, I guess, isn't it, for people to kind of get in touch and find out more about how they can get involved with New Futures Nepal.
Yes.
And we can include when we put the podcast out, we can include links to your website for people to find out more information and share kind of links to your social media and that kind of thing as well, because it is a lovely story to kind of hear about how you all came together and kind of created this from scratch, and kind of the legacy, the long-term legacy of the organisation. It's not been just a flash in the pan and you've all moved on. You've all obviously been very passionate about it over a long period of time, which is great to see. And like you say, you've got your 20th anniversary celebrations this year, haven't you?
We have. And I think, but just before we move on to that, I think your question was where has the money gone and what are some of the challenges that we faced. I think it still feels quite recent to us, but 2015 Nepal had an enormous earthquake. It killed thousands of people, displaced many more, and I think that certainly was an opportunity for us, like any other charity that focuses on Nepal, to be able to work with them to provide temporary housing and food. And of course, the latest challenge that we're all still facing globally is around COVID. So we, certainly for the last 2 years, I think we've probably focused, so a lot of what we've talked about already has been around the Kathmandu area. And Nepal is very Kathmandu-centric. People think that UK is very London-centric, but I can tell you in Nepal, it's very Kathmandu-focused. So one of the areas that we've, I guess, had the good fortune to have connections with is the Everest area, which is quite a long way from Kathmandu and super rural. Not very much infrastructure out there, if any. And what we noticed, or what they noticed, was that a lot of the aid that was being made available, which wasn't a huge amount anyway, just wasn't reaching out as far as the Everest area. And one of the key industries that Nepal has is its tourism. I think everybody knows a trekker that's been trekking. Everybody's heard of Mount Everest. And that whole trekking industry is a major income for the country. There's lots of people that work in that industry, running tea houses or providing trekking services, all sorts of things. And since the coronavirus has hit, the tourism industry in Nepal just collapsed overnight. So what this meant was that there was large areas of the population that just suddenly went to having zero income. There is no social security system in Nepal. There is no unemployment benefit that people can rely upon. So they went from not very much to zero in a very, very short space of time. And also didn't have access to the PPE equipment or to the lateral flow tests or to some of the other facilities that we were able to get hold of. There was some facilities around in Kathmandu, but not as far out into the regions as the Everest area. So certainly over the last 2 years, we've spent a good proportion of our income providing this support into that Everest area to one particular NGO for it's a range of things. We even helped them create a food bank because there's just been times where there just hasn't been enough food available for people in the locality. So we helped them create a food bank, but also helping them be able to provision for themselves PPE equipment, the funding to go out and buy. Even if it's from across the border in India, they've been able to provision for themselves some of the facilities that they've needed to look after the people in their own community. And other things as well that we wouldn't necessarily have imagined. If you think about, there are some of the mountain schools that attract children from, hundreds of square miles around the school. They just travel a long way to go to school. The way that some of the schools run is that the teachers, there's an allocation of teachers that they get funded from the government, but some of the schools some of the larger schools, they need more teachers to be able to teach the volume of children that they have, more than the government provides.
Yeah.
So they, in their self-sufficient way, the parents of the children would contribute some money each period, each month or week, into the school, so that the school has the ability to be able to increase the head count of teachers. That stopped as well.
Yeah.
So part of the outreach that they came to us for was to be able to temporarily fund some of the teacher salaries, not all of them, but just the ones that were being funded locally, just for a year or two until normality comes back. So I think the extent of the impact, I think, was just a lot more detailed than we initially imagined. It wasn't just around the sickness. It's the whole thing about being able to live, being able to inspire and facilitate the children to continue to go to school.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly the most recent challenge. And I think it's trekking season now, so it's which is kind of like the spring and autumn time is the time where people typically go trekking. So we are looking forward, hopefully, to something more positive coming out of Nepal.
Yeah.
In terms of as the travel opens up globally and everybody's thinking, oh, good, I can go on holiday again. That maybe there's some positive news coming back, that actually the tourism is coming back into Nepal. But but our hand is still in our pocket in terms of being able to provide the funding. And
but I suppose as well, because of the size and makeup of the organisation that you can respond much quicker to those kinds of needs and be on the ground a lot quicker in terms of that financial support, because there's not a big process and lots of hoops for people to jump through. You've got those on the ground contacts and the kind of network in Nepal, and you can find out very quickly and easily what the needs are and respond and react
and that
positively.
In the early years, I think finding the right NGOs was one of our big challenges. You read too much in the press around the wrong kind of NGOs, and I think it was always a concern of ours to make sure that the NGOs that we deal with are have not only have the same vision, but also have the same ethical conduct as well, and that they will be honest stewards of what we trust them with. As Lynne says, they are audited by their own government. We also audit them when we go over and visit to make sure that we can trace the money to see where it's gone, and make sure that but equally, a lot of it is based on trust that we've been able to build up over those years with the people, and to see the results, the quick results of the project. The need comes in and we can send the money out, and within a few weeks we can see that the temporary housing is there. It wasn't there before, and it is there now. Yeah. We can see the people in the hospitals with the PPE equipment, and we can get those reports back. And it's tremendous. It's what keeps us going 20 years in. I don't think if we'd thought 20 years ago would we even last this long, but I think we have, which I think is kind of testament to the fact that there is a real need out there, and for us it's enriching to be able to still have that feeling in our hearts that we're still doing something here in the UK that is actually making a real difference to people in Nepal. And I think that is certainly what keeps us old ducks going.
And I love that. And I guess the biggest question then is, so what's next? The next 20 years, or the next 2 years, or 5 years, or what have you? What are the plans? What is the hopes for it moving forward? So
let's assume that coronavirus, we do for once and forever sort that one out. I think one of the key areas that we still feel is not as strong as it could be in Nepal is around the adult care for people with disability, quite severe disability. So, we've supported children going through certainly the Hope Centre with what might appear to be, to people like you and me, maybe quite severe limiting disabilities, but actually because they've been able to go through the education system and into further education and higher education colleges and get the qualifications that they need, they have actually become really successful people. You know, one of them was Inspirational Woman of the Year in Nepal in 2019. Amazing. I think it was. You know, she's represented her country, wheelchair basketball, benches. She almost got into the Olympics for bench press, weightlifting. You know, so but equally, having said all of that, you know, we're also looking after people with disabilities that means that they are so severe that they will not be able to become self-sufficient and self-support. You know, so our ethos is to try and enable people to be self-sufficient where possible, and we will provide whatever support we can to enable them to achieve that. But having said that, so I think that's where we can see a gap at the moment, is that there just isn't a large number of facilities, or very many facilities, that really offer genuine, supportive, loving environmental care for people with quite severe disabilities. So
I suppose I was going to say, it's probably quite important for you guys to know that you've had, the care of these young people in the Hope Centre, and you don't want them to pass out and graduate in terms of age from being able to be in the Hope Centre and then, be left.
No, that's
unsupported.
Right. Yeah, and Nepal, like anyone, it does have its rules and regulations in terms of where it is appropriate for people to be in a children's home or not. So as children become adults, it's not appropriate for them to be there. So, but when you look around to say, okay, so where next? You're right, absolutely right. Having looked after these children for 10 or 15 years, and you've kind of seen them grow up and see them develop and see them flourish and everything else. It's like your own child. You wouldn't electively choose for your child to just leave home into something that you wouldn't want to live in yourself. So I think that's our next challenge, which is to make sure that the children that are in our care at the moment, as they graduate from those homes and into adulthood, that we create, we find something, or we probably have to create something that is probably much smaller in scale, but has the ability to be able to provide that, and it really is 24/7 care, for people that need that. And I think, through the discussions that we do have locally on the ground, we know that there are people within that geographical area of Kathmandu that really are supportive of what we do. So Kathmandu is regionalised in the way that lots of cities are. So we are connected with the local dignitaries and the mayor from that area. They know about us. They support what we do. They are hugely supportive of the results and the way that we care for people through the NGO that we would deal with on the ground. And I think what they're looking for, I think, is to work with us to think about how they could create some environments, some better care within their own area, because that's good for them politically, but it's also good for the community as well, where these facilities are provided. So I think that's the challenge for us for the next 2 to 5 or maybe another 20 years, is to try and look to see how we can either plug that gap in terms of whether it's another build and sustain project, which again is hooks you in for a long time, but we've got over that now in terms of our fear, in terms of
used to that big commitment.
We are, so so that's the exciting part for us. It's very personal in terms of how we care for the people that we care for. So
brilliant. That's great. Is there anything else you want to say to finish off? Anything you want to add? Obviously, we know that we need to get more people supporting through regular giving. and to find out more about the projects and stuff that you're doing. So we'll make sure that is, shouted about loud and clear. But anything else you want to add before we finish off? Either of you? I feel as though I've talked for a long time already, and that's what it's for. It's a podcast. If we weren't talking, it'd be a bit boring, wouldn't it?
Got all the messages out there and everything, but I think Lynne summed it up really well. We've achieved a lot already. It's still a drop in the ocean, So I think the thought that was in our head 20 years ago, which is, well, I'm sure we're not going to be able to do very much, but let's do it anyway. We've surpassed whatever targets we set ourselves, and we've done so many different things in terms of that whole 24/7 care of an individual, through to working with an organisation in New York to build an anime comic around child trafficking so that could be distributed to children in school. So the number of lives that we've touched in the last 20 years, we can't count that. It is thousands and thousands. Everything from helping to educate children about the risks of child trafficking, through to some of the more detailed stuff, in terms of that real intensive care that we offer. We're 20 years in. We are absolutely more committed now than we ever were. Yeah. If that's possible. Yeah. We want to continue to grow. So.
How else can people get involved with New Futures Nepal, like other than being a regular donor? Do you recruit for new trustees or volunteers, or is there any of that kind of thing, or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Anything. We welcome with open arms anybody who wants to come and talk to us about anybody who's got any skills that they think could be useful for us. We are fundraisers, but primarily, but we are much more than that at heart. It's before I forget, Rob, I must say thank you for letting us do this, because it's great to be able to think that we're going to get this out there and somebody might just pick up on it. Yes, we welcome, if anybody thinks they can help with any, we are all volunteers. If they think they've got a great idea about how they can raise a bit of money, albeit, a car boot sale or a baking cake or whatever, we're always interested in that. If people feel they've got skills that would be useful to us in a more managerial role, again, I say we are all volunteers, but if somebody thinks that they really would like to get more involved, they can contact us. All our email addresses are on the website. And just, I hope we do go on for another 20 years. I can't imagine where we'll be at that point. But the need never goes away in Nepal. As I say, that a small country landlocked between India and China, with enough natural disasters that can occur to rock rock any country off its axis. But the people are so fantastically resilient and loyal and self-effacing. They are the most delightful people to work with and work alongside, really, as our colleagues, and they are inspirational, and that's why we're all where we are. We can do a little bit. A little bit of money in the UK or in Europe goes an awful long way in Nepal, and that's still the case. The infrastructure is improving. The government is putting in place lots of basic aid these days, but it's minute because they are a terribly poor country. And so anything, we just need to get the message across to people that giving makes you feel good. Just if you really have got some spare time, spare money, whatever you've got, just get in touch if you're interested in Nepal in particular. A fascinating country, and as I say, great opportunities to to work. It's great to be involved in the growth of that country and the development, and to see the children who come into our care as frightened young individuals grow into independent adults who lead lives of their own, and as Andrew said, get married, go on to have their own children. It does make you feel good.
Yeah, it must be very rewarding.
Yeah, it is.
Brilliant. All right, well, I think we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining me, and
Thank you very
look
much.
forward to seeing the journey unfold even further in the future. Thank you for listening. For more information about Make Good Grow or any of the good causes that we featured on the Behind the Cause podcast series, visit makegoodgrow.com/podcast.